aliens in there, and no, I've not heard of that. But even if I had heard of it, I would reject it. Nor by word, nor by letter as from us, is that the day of Christ is at hand. And then here's what's been on my mind this morning. Let no man deceive you by any means. And that's basically what we're going to talk about today. One of the speakers that when we were preparing to go to MUFON, I kept looking at the list of speakers that they had, and I'm going, yeah, I want to hear these guys speak. Because some of these I've heard several times before. The one I'm going to talk about today is a man by the name of Grant Cameron. He is known as a UFO historian. And you can go on YouTube and type up Grant Cameron. He's got, oh man, hundreds of videos out there where he does speaking engagements at UFO conferences all over the world. He does podcasts for various people. He has his own podcast, I think, that goes out every week. And Grant Cameron basically is a guy, and to his credit, the guy's got a mind like a steel trap. Okay, I mean he remembers and can recall so much information. The guy definitely is plugged into the whole of the UFO. I don't know what you call it, a UFO syndrome or whatever, but he's plugged into it pretty deep. There isn't much that goes on in the area of UFOs or alien contact or anything like that. There isn't much that he doesn't at least research or know something about, and is able then to adequately speak on that subject, giving out, of course, his own ideas and his own theories. And one thing about him, he's Canadian, so he has a Canadian accent. He doesn't have a bout, he has a boat. Okay? And, but anyway, he speaks 100 miles an hour. I mean, he just talks and talks and talks and talks. And it's almost like he can go on stage and they just like a spinning top. They just pull the string and they turn Grant Cameron loose, and he spins for like 3 hours, and he talks on everything under the sun. Doesn't have a note in the world sometimes, and it is a very, very enlightening talk that he gives. And
get
I
over
was
there.
expecting, I guess, something new out of him that I personally had not already heard. But that's not what I got. I have already heard him speak on the subject that he spoke on. But that didn't bother me because I sat and listened to him. I think I audio recorded part of it just for my notes and things like that. And but basically, he gave out his idea that a few years ago, he decided that he wasn't going to investigate UFOs or UFO contact or UFOs landing or anything like that, or human encounter with UFO. He decided that he was going to change the nature of his investigation and the things that he looked into. And basically what he changed into was he became a student of human consciousness.
You
Because
fucking idiot.
he said that human consciousness has everything to do with whether or not mankind is going to accept any kind of help or make any kind of agreement or have any kind of meaningful contact with the UFOs, and remember, aliens are angels, evil angels. So he says that basically if man's going to have any kind of relevant, good contact, if these are going to be friends, which was the point of the symposium, then people had to have their consciousness raised. And I'll explain what that means in a minute. To the point to where they accept the aliens, angels, start back in the early 70s. He was somebody who was going to university, and I don't remember what, he may have been studying like political science or something like that. And he had no interest in UFOs whatsoever until an event called Charlie Red Star happened. Now, I have not heard of this until I started looking into Grant Cameron's life. When I saw what it was, I knew how significant it was. Grant Cameron became involved in ufology as the Vietnam War ended in May 1975 with personal sightings of a UFO object, which locally became known as Charlie Red Star. Now, I couldn't find out what that meant. I think the Charlie part is like how like military people use the letter C. Yeah, this is Alpha Tango Charlie, Charlie Tango. Okay? So the C must be relevant for some reason. I don't know. The red star obviously would be depicting what the UFO itself or the series of UFOs look like. They look like red stars, so somebody came up with the phrase Charlie Red Star. All right? But anyway, Cameron heard about this, and then he saw it. So they became locally known as Charlie Red Star. You see that Grant Cameron finally wrote a book about it, True Reports of one of North America's biggest UFO sightings. The sightings occurred in Carmen, Manitoba, about 25 miles north of the Canada-U.S. border, which is probably why you and I didn't hear so much about it, because it didn't happen in the United States. And let's be honest, us Americans, if it don't happen in America, we don't know that it doesn't happen. Okay? I mean, that's just how we are as Americans. It takes place just 25 miles north of the border, but in America, we're like, I've never heard of it. But it was a significant event, and it wasn't a one-time event. It was an event that took place over days, and if I remember right, took place over weeks. There were multiple sightings. So that, and here's some pictures of you remember, this is the early 70s. Nobody's carrying around iPhones at the time, okay? And there just happened to be some people who had cameras, and they took these two pictures, and I think there may be a couple more, but there's not much. The one on the lower right-hand side really has my interest because I've seen videos of UFOs that look very, very similar to that. But anyway, what happened was when people started reporting that just about every night UFOs were being seen or in and around this area, well, naturally, it got people's curiosity. They were going, man, I want to see one of these things. And what happened then was you had people who've got their cars all parked up and down the highway in certain spots where the UFOs had appeared in a previous time. And everybody's sitting out in lawn chairs. They've all got like 8mm cameras. And they've got, they've got their Polaroid cameras. They're going to take pictures, some with 35mm cameras. Basically, you've got all of these people who are waiting on these UFOs to show up. And there was a couple occasions where it did happen, thus, that's where the pictures came from. But what's funny to me is that when this event happened, apparently a Hollywood director who was gathering all the stories he could about UFOs for a movie that he was going to make actually used this event, Charlie Red Star, and he wrote it up as a scene in his movie about UFOs.
Go for a walk.
You may have heard of it, called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Here's the scene. You remember the scene where Roy Neary and the little boy and his mom, they're out here on this road, and there's this farm family with these two girls and a mom and their big dad. He's I think he's passed on now, but he was a very good Hollywood character actor. But anyway, after this night occurred, the next night you have all these people sitting out. You've got these old people eating, playing cards, eating Kentucky Fried Chicken. And if you haven't seen the movie, go see it. And if you have seen the movie and you can watch it again, go watch it again, because that scene of Charlie Red Star and all these people gathering along the side of the road actually happened. And Steven Spielberg wrote about it and put it in his movie. Now, the MUFON write-up on Grant Cameron said this: these sightings, the Charlie Red Star sightings and so on, led to a decade of research into the early work done by the Canadian government into the flying saucer phenomenon. From here, Cameron proceeded to do almost 2 decades of research into the role of the President of the United States and intelligence officials in the UFO mystery. So basically, everybody that's in the UFO movement, they have their own particular field of study. In other words, there's some people who study UFOs and aliens that focus on the moon. They believe that there are bases on the moon. I've seen some of the pictures that they purport to be buildings of different kinds and so on. And I'll be honest with you, they're so grainy and blurry that I just, I'm just like, man, I don't know if I can see that or not. However, I have seen with the advent of some of the newer cameras that are out on the market now, the Nikon P1000 and others, whose lens is so good, it's able to pick up very, very close shots of the moon. And there are people who basically aim their cameras at the moon almost every night, and there are video images of objects flying, landing on the moon, coming up from the surface of the moon, flying around the moon. I can't discount that. I don't know exactly what it is, but I can't discount it. But anyway, you got some people who look at the moon angle. There's some people who investigate the sun, and they think that there's UFOs that are draining energy from the sun. There's people who look at images and see UFOs there. There's some people dealing with alien contact, some dealing with abduction, some dealing with just all kinds of different things. Well, Grant Cameron basically decided to study, for whatever reason, the history of how the UFO movement affected various presidents in the United States. Now, why he as a Canadian was focused on America, I don't know. But that's just what his interest was. He wrote several books, and like I said, he is
Yes, I gotta go for my walk.
of the top speakers that there is. In other words, if somebody decides
right
to
back.
have a UFO conference,
Like, comment, subscribe.
and they can get Grant Cameron to
Thank you
come
for
and speak
watching.
at this
Peace out.
conference, they know